So good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Keisha Golden Cooper, and I have the humble honor of serving as the Director of Guidance for Teaneck Public Schools, as well as working with this fabulous group of counselors. And we have a guest. I'll introduce him in a minute. And tonight we are going to cover everything and more that senior parents need to know. There's a lot of information that is going to be shared with you. And the way the evening is going to flow, I'm going to open it up, or I'm going to turn it over to the fabulous counselors because they are the true experts in this game of knowing how to support you and your students through this year. And then after the counselors present, we have Mr. O'Neill, who he'll take a little bit of time to introduce himself, but he's coming to us from Ramapo College. So before we get into the bulk of the information, which is going to be a lot, I always want to make sure I take time to, to hope and wish that everyone on the other side of this screen that's watching us is doing well, especially during this time. I can speak on behalf of not only the counseling department, but all of the teachers and the administrators and everybody, not only in the high school, but throughout the district. We do hope that you are well, that you are taking time as you're navigating this process in this year to care for yourself. And we miss you guys. We miss the students, we miss the families coming in and out of the building. And we are waiting to be able to talk to you in person, to greet you. But until that time, please feel free to reach out to anyone in the high school. Obviously, your school counselors are always there to help. You can always reach out to myself, the grade level assistant principal this year, who is Ms. Mack. Welcoming Mr. Valdez as the interim principal of the high school. And of course, wanting to give recognition to our superintendent, Dr. Irving, who has supported all of my interesting and unique ideas that I brought to the district last year and continuing this year, as well as our Board of Education, Dr. Walzer, as well as the rest of the board. So the pleasantries are just about done. A couple of housekeeping things. This meeting or session is being recorded. It will be posted on our own THS School Counseling YouTube channel. So if you have not joined or subscribed, check it out. It will be there by about tomorrow afternoonish, as well as this session will also be posted in the seniors class Google Classroom. I'm trying to think what else. Also, questions and answers. As we are moving through this evening, again, you're going to receive a lot of information. Please feel free to drop a question in the Q&A box. At the end of the session, I'll be moderating the question and answer to see what we may not have covered. So I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed crew. I have the best team in the county and in the state of our counseling department. And take it away, guys. Mr. Reese, you're muted.
Good evening, guys. Parents, how you guys all doing? Hope you guys are doing well out there. We're going to begin our senior parent meeting. It's going to basically describe all the things that you have to worry about. Well, not worry. You shouldn't say worry. Things for college. But I know you guys want to get to the FAFSA part, which is probably the most important part for the parents to understand, is the financial piece of how can we afford and how can we pay for college. So this first slide is just our contact information from each counselor. We have Mr. Book's contact all the way down the line, straight down Mr. Book, Mrs. Fleischer, Mrs. Garcia, Mrs. Mitchell, myself, Mr. Reese, and Mrs. Taylor. And our secretaries who are not on here, but Mr. Hollis and Mrs. Dockery. So the purpose of the meeting, college types, timelines and more, application components of what each student has to worry about, the process overview, and other important information. And obviously a Q&A at the end. So we begin with types of college, which one is a good fit. There are two types of colleges, 2-year schools and 4-year schools. So 2 years of schools, you pretty much apply in February, which is ideal, but for the most part, you can apply anytime. Bergen Community Colleges our community college, which was pretty much ranked the highest or the best college, community college in all of New Jersey. No transcript until after graduation, no SAT scores or ACT scores, no letters of recommendation, and qualifying students can apply to the NJ STARS program, which is pretty much a grant. If you're top 15% of the class, you pretty much go to college for free. Four-year schools, examples FDU, you apply by the deadline, which is October to January mostly. November 1 is the big early action date. A lot of our seniors do apply at that date, but each school has their own deadline. So each student should check their application to make sure which deadline is for them, because you have to have your information in by the deadline. You have to apply by the deadline. Teaneck High School, what we're responsible to send. We send your transcripts and letters of recommendation, and obviously our school profile. The student's responsibility to send is their essay and their SAT scores. You have to send your SAT scores through the College Board account that they created. I believe is $11 each score for each school. If you had a fee waiver, then it's obviously free. But the student's responsibility is to send the essay and their SAT scores along with their application. How to decide, how you're gonna help your child decide which school along with us. A couple of things to consider. School size, small, medium, or large. If you wanna be in a lecture hall with 150 students or 100 students, a large school might be for you, like FDU. A small school like Caldwell, which is my alma mater, you want to be in class with 30 students, that school might be for you. Geographic locations, obviously important as well, where you're gonna be. Private versus public, this is a big thing as far as cost factor. Typically, private schools are more expensive than public schools, but the reality is higher education is expensive. So it's gonna be expensive either way, but typically private is more expensive than public. Private, you might have to take a religion or theology course for their core courses. Academic programs offered. This is probably one of the most important, if not the most important part. You want to make sure that each school that your son or daughter is applying to has the academic program that they want. I always say first, second, and third option, just in case they change their mind or they switch. You know, you want to make sure that that school has all their options. Extracurricular activities. If the student wants to participate in intramurals, you want to make sure those schools have those things when they're applying or they're attending. Other services offered, obviously academic support services, tutoring, peer tutoring, help with essay writing, special education services. You want to make sure each school has these things to support your child academic endeavors. College visits. I like to think this is the most important part of considering a college. You should go visit the college that you're applying to or that you want to go to. Don't take a blind eye to it. Visit the campus. I know we're in tough times now, but a lot of campuses are opening their doors for visits. So if they are opening doors for visits, you should take advantage and visit to see yourself on the campus. Go through the dorms, go through the library facilities, go through the residence hall, go through the whole entire school to see if this is the place that you want to live for the next 4 years. It's really important to check that out. We have virtual tours as well. Take advantage of every tour you can possibly take, because this is where your child is going to live for the next 4 years, and they have to be comfortable. So you want to make sure that the school is a right fit for them. And there's nothing like knowing by visiting. I know when I visited my college, I knew it was a fit as soon as I walked on the campus. You get that tingling feel. So go visit a campus with your child during our breaks and see if this is the right place for them. College rep visits. We have a lot of college reps coming to visit our campus virtually. Our students should check Naviance. Parents, you have your own access to Naviance as well. If you don't know your password, you can email your school counselor or your child's school counselor, and they can reset your password for you, and you will get updates on when colleges are coming to our campus. A lot of schools have already booked up, so you'll have a calendar on Naviance to show you when colleges are visiting our campuses. Students, they have access to the Google Classroom where they can schedule meetings with their counselor or get all the updated information from us to know when schools are coming. And that's the course classroom code below. That's the end of my slides. I'm going to pass it on to my good partner, Mr. Book, and he's going to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reese. So hello, parents. I like to say this little corny thing before I get started every year. I think you can, and guardians, excuse me, I think you can reflect back when you dropped your child off at kindergarten that first day, and now we're applying to college, so it's very exciting. Okay, with that being said, let's talk about the three forms of applying. The first and most utilized is the Common Application, and what's wonderful about this, we call it one-stop shopping. There's more than 800 colleges on the Common App where you can apply to all these schools at once. You can utilize one essay for all the applications. Some schools require supplemental writings, which add a little bit to the application. So you just have to be cognizant of that. And each school has a cost. And you also have to remember that if you receive a waiver, we can discuss that at another date. The Coalition application is another form of applying to schools one-stop shopping. It has less schools, more essays, and a little more invasive questions. It's not utilized as much as the Common App, but it's definitely a good application. And if you're going to apply to certain schools in Maryland or in other parts of the country, it's better to use the Coalition application. The third application that we like to utilize is the Common Black application. This is for the historically Black colleges and universities. There's one fee. There's 50 plus schools on it. It's a great way to apply to the schools. I would just say also utilize the direct websites when you're applying to HBCUs. I find it to be very beneficial as well. But you got to do it your way to make your process easiest. What I like to say is apply to 6 to 11 schools. You're entitled to apply to as many as you want, but there's a cost to that. But also the reason we like to put that number is, excuse me, to be in the 2-4-2 model, which is 2 REACH schools where you're just under the benchmarks, 4 profile schools where you're at the benchmarks or just underneath it, and then 2 safety schools where you're guaranteed admittance. And also never forget that we have one of the best community colleges in the country in our backyard, BCC. Next slide, please. All right, these are the 3 ways to apply to college. Deadlines and dates are very, very important in this process. So the first one is early decision. This is a binding agreement. So basically anyone that does early decision, they know from either childhood and in all seriousness in the beginning of their junior year. And basically this is the school that you know has everything you want and need, and this is where you wanted to go since you're a child. But just know, if you get admitted when you apply early decision, you're required to rescind all your applications to the other schools. So that's a binding agreement. If you commit and then rescind your acceptance, that could hurt future classes down the road. Just keep that in mind. The second form of applying is early action. And what this is, it's just priority deadlines. So basically, it's a non-binding agreement. You have a little more flexibility. You don't have to withdraw your other applications if you receive acceptance. It's just getting your applications done so you can just focus on your remaining courses in high school and really just go about your business. I highly recommend early action. So that's a very good thing to do. The third and last one is regular and rolling admissions. This can go all the way up to June 1st. So these regular deadlines are good for students that have trouble kind of figuring out what they want to do, what routes they want to take, kind of what essay they want to do. So this gives us time to have those important discussions and get students to where they need to be. So mom and dad, don't be concerned that they don't have a plan. We will have a plan for each and every one of your children. Next slide, please. Okay, organization, time, and keeping your sanity. Definitely keep in mind all of those things when you're applying to schools. Students, utilize all the Google features in the Google Suite. Utilize your personal applications on your cell phone. It's such a big tool. Use handwritten calendars, write things down. Like I always tell people, the written word is the most powerful word, all right? When you're writing your essays, really think about what you want to share with these admissions reps because you're giving them insight to who you are as a person. You can talk about adverse things. You can talk about funny things. You can talk about things that make you unique. That's what your essay should consist of. But just so you know, in the Common Application, there's a section called the writing section. There's 6 essay prompts, so you can review that at that time to help you get better ideas. A very important aspect of the college process are your teacher recommendation letters. So you are required to have 2 teacher letters and you get 1 counselor letter automatically. If you want to get an outside letter from someone that you do community service with or in your clergy, or if you went to a different school and you feel more comfortable with those teachers, we can definitely get our hands on those as well. If you would like to add a 3rd teacher letter, that's okay too. It just makes your application more robust. And lastly, the student responsibility and the biggest responsibility, in my opinion, is sending your test scores. But this year it's a little different due to COVID. Not an excuse, but actuality. So there's something called test optional. So not every school is requiring test scores, and then we'll get into this later on in the presentation. So that's where we are with that. My final slide, one more, Kelbeck. Thank you. And my favorite part is the application components. This is the most important word you got to remember in the college process. Holistic, okay? The admissions representatives want to know the person, not just academic, not just socially, not just extracurricular. They want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas, and how you're going to be a globalized citizen. And I'll leave you with this thought, okay? I had a meeting today with one of my seniors, and this happens every year in my 10-year career. They say, Mr. Book, I don't have enough things to put for what I did extracurricularly. I said, okay, let's have a conversation and really break it down. By the end of each conversation, we have 10 or 12 things. So you might not think it's something, but it's something. All right, guys? So that's where I'm gonna leave you. If you have any questions, contact me by email. And parents, I'm available, we're all available. So good luck, and it's gonna be great.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ms. Fleischer, and I'm going to talk to you about the different components of the application. Basically, there are a lot of different components. We've got the transcript, and actually, I'm going to let Ms. Garcia continue. Ms. Garcia, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Ms. Fleischer. Good evening, everyone. Parents and students, thank you for joining us. While this is usually a very exciting and at the same time scary time of your lives, during this climate that we're in, the numerous types of uncertainties add another level of stress to this time. But we want you to know and rest assured that we're here to help. We're here to help you through this. And when it gets tough and you have questions, don't hesitate, even though we're not physically in school, to email us. And hopefully someday we will be physically in school. Call us, email us. We're here to help you. I'm going to speak about a couple of the components of the college application kind of briefly so that we can get to the financial aid presentation. But one of the main components is the transcript. All of our students should be familiar with their transcript. A lot of them have been asking for it because a lot of college applications ask for information that's on there. If you haven't requested your unofficial transcript, have your child request it from their counselor soon, and we send it to them to help them with the application. And when it comes time to send it to the colleges, later on, Ms. Fleischer will describe the process for requesting that your transcripts get sent to the college. Transcripts contain your child's first 3 years of high school, their courses, their grades, their cumulative GPA up until now, their class ranks, and their senior year courses. For now, no grades. Some colleges require mid-year transcripts. Those will include mid-year grades for senior year. Some colleges do not require transcripts, like Rutgers and Penn State and the Cal system. They require students to enter the information that's on the transcript directly onto a self-reported academic record. So that's another reason why the students want to request this transcript and have it with them when they're completing their applications. Next slide, please. Another important component, as Mr. Book mentioned, is the SAT scores, but this could be a silver lining for the class of 2021. A lot of colleges are test optional, which means that they're not requiring that students submit SAT scores in order to evaluate their applications. It is up to the student to decide whether or not they want to send them. So there are a lot of information about the SATs, registration information, dates to take the test, dates when scores that are available. So we want to refer you to this slide, and there's a lot of links on there, hyperlinks that the students can use. So one thing to keep in mind with the dates is if your child is applying early decision or early action that may have a November 1st deadline, they want to make sure that they have test scores if required, because most schools are now test optional. They want to have their scores available by the application deadline that they're applying for, okay? So these dates here can be helpful. There are a lot of fees associated with SATs, but for students who have free reduced lunch now, or they also need to reapply for this year, the application is online. There's a hyperlink to it on that slide. You can get a fee waiver. You have to talk to your counselor for SAT. Students who are eligible for free reduced lunch, talk to your counselors about fees and fee waivers, not just for SATs, but also for college applications. We do encourage you to remind your students to, if they are going to send scores, to send their scores as soon as possible, because it's not an instant process and it's not an automatic process. So sometimes students think that if they took the SATs, the colleges are going to get them. They have to actually request them, and they do that through their College Board account. Only they can do it, or if they share their account with the parents can do it. And it usually takes about 2 weeks. So if we, well, in a little while, I'll explain something else about score reports in a couple of slides. But one important thing to remember is right now, make a decision that's safe for your family, whether or not to take the test, and know that colleges are keeping that in mind, okay? Most of them are not requiring the SATs or ACTs. 2/3 are not requiring the SATs or ACTs. Next slide, please. The ACTs, here are some of the test dates. They are offering, due to COVID, the test in October, almost every Saturday in October, without late fees. A lot of the same information applies in terms of sending scores. You have to do it directly from their website. The student has to do it. And it is not instant, and it is not automatic. And if a student has a fee waiver, the fees are covered through the fee waiver for the sending scores and for the registration. Sometimes kids ask us, which test should I take, SAT or ACT? We've provided a link to an article that they can read. But usually the best strategy is to take 2 practice tests, one of each. Decide which one you feel more comfortable with, and take at least that test if you don't want to take both. Next slide, please. Next. Thank you. Nowadays, some colleges are accepting self-reported scores. What that means is the student can get their score report on the screen, take a picture of it, and email it to the colleges. If your college accepts that, that is great. If not, you have to go the traditional way and request it through the College Board or the ACT. Couple of things here are just reiterated, so I want to move a little faster. Just want to remind that once you take the test, you can change whether or not you want to have your score sent. So you have 9 days. You can either add colleges to your score sends, or delete colleges or change colleges. If you don't have a fee waiver, after 4 score reports, each one will cost approximately $12, each additional one. Next slide, please. letters of recommendations. So in the absence of test scores, which a lot of students are going to go test optional, your letters of recommendations may be more important than in previous years. So keep in mind, you want to start asking your teachers early because they're going to get a lot of requests. So we advise students to ask at least 2 teachers, preferably junior year teachers if they're applying right now early, because their senior year teachers don't know them too well, and their 9th grade teachers knew them who they were in 9th grade. 10th grade can work sometimes if your teachers have retired and you don't have a way to contact them. But ideally, you want to go with the teachers who know you now, which are usually your junior year teachers. When requesting letters, we always do them through Naviance, not the Common App. Never request letters of recommendations on the Common App. Please remind your children to not do that because it can complicate things for us and for them later. So they can ask us, we have the steps here, but we can guide them on how to ask on Naviance. The teacher first has to tell them yes via an email. Usually we would say that in person. The teacher in person. If the teacher says yes, then ask in Naviance. But since we're not in person, the student should ask the teacher via email, say something that they remember about the class, something that was important to them in terms of an assignment, a highlight, and request that they write a letter. Once the teacher agrees, they can ask them through Naviance, and we can help them do that if they don't know how to follow the steps. The counselor letter is very important too. We speak about the student in the holistic perspective. We talk about their extracurricular activities, their personality, outside of the classroom experience. So it's very important that the student complete the student brag sheet, and we ask that the parents complete a parent brag sheet in Naviance. Again, like one of my colleagues said, if you, the parents, don't know your Naviance password login, just email one of us, your child's counselor, and we're happy to reset it for you. And last, sometimes students want someone else who's not an academic person from school to write a letter. That is great if the person knows them well, like a coach or a job supervisor or a community service supervisor. It's always safe to have this. Scholarships often require this, so it doesn't hurt to have one ready for when that scholarship time comes. And not all colleges require letters of recommendations. One example near and dear to us is Rutgers. They don't usually require them. They don't allow us to send them, but most colleges do. Next slide, please. And now Ms. Fleischer will speak to you about the essay and the personal statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. So the essay and personal statement, sometimes you'll see it called either one, is extremely important, especially this year, because so many students can't submit test scores. So the colleges really, a lot of them are doing a truly holistic evaluation of the student. And the essay is really the only chance where the student is able to speak for themselves about who they are. So it's really important for them to be genuine, to really write an essay that reflects them. If you think about it, the college admissions counselors are reading hundreds upon hundreds of essays. So the ones that are truly authentic do stand out. It can be about something as inconsequential as what kind of toothpaste they like to use. It doesn't have to be something extremely profound. It can be about something that influenced them tremendously in their lives, or it can be about why they like the game backgammon. The point is that they are true to who they are and really giving the college a sense of who they are. There are lots of samples they can find as inspiration. If they reach out to their counselor, we all can provide them with samples that they can look at just to get some ideas of what some of these essays might look like. And I do recommend they have 1 or 2 adults they trust read the essay, like their counselor, their English teacher, and family member. I would say no more than 2 people though, because if you've heard the expression, too many cooks spoil the pot, spoil the broth, too many editors spoil the essay. It just becomes too many different conflicting opinions and the student just feels overwhelmed. So again, I think 1 adult is fine, 2 at the most. All right, we can move on to the next slide. All right, so the process. Basically, it's a good idea to be organized in this process. There are a lot of deadlines and a lot of different components to keep track of. You and your child know what kind of organizer they are, whether there's someone that does well with pen and paper, with spreadsheets, with postings on the refrigerator, whatever works for your family. But make sure you have some way to keep track of the application deadlines. What's really nice is that on Naviance and Common App, they do, actually in Naviance, you can see the deadlines all in one place. But I still think it's a good idea to kind of frame out when you want to do which part of the process so you have it organized. Obviously, you want to start with the applications that have the earliest deadlines first. As Mr. Book mentioned earlier, there's a number of different ways to apply. Almost every student I've had who applies to a 4-year college uses Common App because most of the colleges are there. As Mr. Book mentioned, Coalition exists also. It's really, in my opinion, and I think most counselors would agree, it's not worth digging into it unless you have a school that's the only way to do it. Or you have a number of schools that are on there and aren't on the Common App. It just requires more time and it's a little bit different than the Common App. And the Common Black College application, the advantage of that is if you are applying to a lot of HBCUs, and also there may be a discount, a cheaper price for applying if you're planning to apply to a lot of them than if you were to apply to them individually or even possibly through the Common App. Not all of the HBCUs are on there, so make sure that you check. You don't want to spend the money and then find out that none of the schools you're interested in are on the Common Black application, because again, they're not all on there. All right, can we move to the next slide? So we do have a process that needs to be followed on our end for the application materials to be processed and submitted to the colleges on a timely basis. So there is first something called a transcript consent Google form. Now that is obviously a Google form that you, the parent, are going to complete and submit through your email address. And it has to match the email address in Skyward. You only need to do it once. It's basically providing consent for us, the counselors, to send your child's transcript and other application materials to the colleges, scholarships, programs that they apply to. We cannot send anything unless this form is submitted, again, through your email address that is listed on Skyward. The second component we need is the student brag sheet. That needs to be completed on Naviance. And this is only necessary for schools or scholarships that require a letter of recommendation. If they're planning to apply to BCC and don't need a letter from us, they don't need the student brag sheet completed. But I would say for most students, even those who attend BCC, they want to apply for a scholarship somewhere down the road. So it's important they get that completed because a lot of what we use to write our letter comes from that brag sheet. So it is very important. It's not listed on here, but there is also a parent brag sheet. Can we write our letters without it? Yes. But can it help us? Yes. I have had students who did not include something in their brag sheet that I saw in the parent brag sheet and was then able to ask the student about. So sometimes parents bring up achievements that the students don't think to bring up, or give us an insight in the student that we might not have come to on our own. And then finally, the student needs to complete the transcript request Google form. So this is different from the consent form. This is the form that the student completes to let us know where they're applying and, importantly, when the deadlines are, whether it's on Common Application, just some key details that we need in order to correctly send the transcript and other materials. You'll notice that it requires at least 10 school days before the deadline. The reason we say school days here is because, again, if they give it to us like just quickly before we go off on winter vacation, we're going to be gone. So they should be getting it to us with sufficient time for us to complete it and get everything in on time. And there are a number of January 1st deadlines. So students need to keep that in mind, especially before the holiday break in December. If your child is planning to apply, Mr. Book spoke earlier about, sorry, that's my son dropping something off. If your child is planning to apply to a college early decision or early action, you need to let your counselor know right now, okay? Because we need to make sure that your student has completed everything they need to have done. So that's basically it on that slide. Go on to the next one. So to review the application process, as we said, just laying it out for you step by step, just like you should be doing with your children. Transcript consent Google form, make sure you get that in. That should be posted shortly on the College and Career Classroom for class of 2021. So if your child is not getting an automatic alerts from that classroom, it is extremely important that they set it up so that they can get that. And also, they need to make sure they, number 2, complete the application, included self-reported grades, which they will need to do for certain schools such as Rutgers and Penn State, where they need their transcript, which their counselor can email to them. And then the student needs to add the colleges to the Naviance list. That's how we can submit their materials. And we need that transcript request Google form. So they have to add it on Naviance, plus they need to give it to us in the Google form. They need to send their SAT or ACT scores to the colleges directly, if they're planning to do so. And we, in the meantime, are going to submit their counselor recommendation and uploaded teacher recommendations, and we will submit their transcripts. Okay? All right. Next slide. So that completes my portion, and I'm going to pass it on to Ms. Taylor.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here with you. We miss all of you. I don't know who's out there, but I miss you anyway. So a little more about Naviance. It's a little bit of a review where you can request teacher recommendations, complete brag sheets, activity sheets. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. The most important thing on this slide is that your students should all be joining the 2021 Google Classroom. I've met with several seniors over the last couple of days. That is where they're getting most of the information. A lot of good information. Pay attention to those announcements. Next slide. So I'm not going to really talk too much about this slide because we have a special guest who is an expert in financial aid, but it is all about the FAFSA, and that actually became available yesterday, October 1st. Today, I don't know what day it is, I'm sorry. Okay, next slide. NJ STARS was mentioned briefly before as well. That's the community scholarship grant for students who are in the top 15% of their class and are taking a rigorous course load. Those students are automatically eligible for that grant, and it's terrific. A lot of that information is found at HESA.org. That's the Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. That is the gateway to all things financial aid in New Jersey. Next slide, please. The search tools for scholarship information, we put a lot of information out. Everything that comes into the school counseling department goes out to you guys. So we are good at getting that information out to you, but you also have to do your own information. Whenever anybody asks me a question that I don't know the answer, I Google. And I'm sure all your kids do too. I'm sure all of you do. It's a great thing to do. You want to find a scholarship? They are out there. I have been told that there's tons of money to be given away. You have to write some essays, do some legwork, Google it. Financial aid night, 10-1, apologize, that probably wasn't supposed to be there anymore. Merit versus need-based scholarship. Merit scholarship is based on your academics and your credentials. Need-based is based on whether or not your family qualifies for aid. Many scholarships that are given at colleges combine both. And there's probably more to be said about that a little later with our guest. And then read the Naviance emails. The emails that come from THS Counselor are really important. And I know that you guys are overloaded with emails, as we all are. Just try to pay attention to those because they are important. Next slide. Briefly touching for the athletes, NCAA Clearinghouse. If you expect to play a Division I or Division II sport in college, you must register with the Eligibility Center. It is right there, eligibilitycenter.org. You need to fill out all of the application and all of the questions. Please try to do that with your child because some of the questions are a little tricky. They may need your help in answering it. Some of us might be able to help them, but it's really something that you need to do. Have a debit or credit card on hand because you have to pay to enter the clearinghouse. And that is to see if you will be eligible, if your courses make you, and your grades make you eligible to play at the Division I or II level. NCAA has foregone the SAT requirement for the class of 2021. So it's really going to be about the transcript and grades. Speak to your counselor if you are dropping any classes because there are some courses that are not eligible in the clearinghouse. And it's important that you don't drop those courses if you are going to play a college sport. Talk to your coaches, talk to your counselors, and that's about it. Miss Mitchell.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Miss Mitchell. Just a couple of things to bring to your attention, some upcoming events going on. As mentioned, there are campus rep visits still going on this year, but the visits are going virtual. So just some things to be mindful of. Not only is Naviance available for the students to check out, but Naviance is also for the parents as well. So if you have not already been able to log into Naviance, we have started to reset and send out and set up some parent and guardian emails this week. So check your email to see if you receive an email to set up your Naviance account. If you haven't received anything yet, please reach out and email thscounselors@tnexschools.org. That's THS counselors at tnexschools.org, and they will be able to start to get that activated for you. Naviance is just a great tool to find out about when these campus rep visits are coming up. So if you know that your child is interested in a certain school, you can actually see when these schools are going to be virtually visiting. Next slide, please. The Teaneck High School School Counseling Department is going to be hosting a College and Career Week this year. It's going to be October 26th through the 29th. We also invite the parents to come out. It's a virtual event as well, so I say come out, but it's going to be a stay in and tune in type of event. So October 26th to the 29th, each day is going to be dedicated to a different set of colleges. So one day will be a New Jersey tri-state area day. One day will be specifically for HBCUs. Another day will be for trade schools, military programs, academy. And the other day will just be for all other schools and colleges across the country. So the Zoom link, that will be via Zoom as well, just like this evening. That will be sent out to the students and to yourself as well. So please make sure you check that out that night also. Next slide. And then just next steps. So you've gotten a lot of information. Some of it may be questions of what do we do from here. We've provided, and we had a senior meeting last week and let the students know exactly their steps that they should be taking, what's going on. So all of your children should be aware of what they need to do. You can also kind of gather what we've shared today and just see the steps and checklists that they should be checking off throughout these next couple of weeks and through this next month. But what we just encourage you also to do in the process is outside of checking and setting up your Naviance account, just being there as a support. It's definitely not only an overwhelming time in the world and in society that we're living in, but just this time frame of preparing and getting ready for college and starting a whole new chapter can be pretty overwhelming for the students. So just having open conversations about them, connecting with them and understanding and speaking to them about what their goals are, what their interests are, and just being that extra support in the home to help navigate and guide them through this next process. And then understanding, like I said, it's an overwhelming time, it's a stressful time. Some of your children may know exactly what they want to do and others may not. So just being open-minded to understanding that everybody's at a different process and a different level. So being just open and understanding that this is a process and we're all here to help and support them through it. And then what is your next step? As we've mentioned, this special guest for today is going to get right into it. The biggest and most important part is completing the FAFSA. This is going to be something that you're going to have your hands all in. Your children cannot make this next step without you being involved in this. So I'm going to turn this back over to Mrs. Golden Cooper, who will introduce our guest to speak further about the FAFSA application process.
Thank you so much. I know there was a lot of information for all those watching, but again, we are here to help and support. I'm just going to go right into sharing Mr. O'Neill's presentation. And Mr. O'Neill, I'll let you, give your own introduction because you can do it best. And just want to thank you for coming out to be with us this evening to walk our families through the next step. Mr. O'Neill, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Sean O'Neill. I'm the director. Mr. Reed mentioned, I'm an FDU graduate. I worked at Caldwell College, which is now Caldwell University, and I earned my master's degree from there. So I'm familiar with a lot of colleges in the area. I know this process seems daunting, and the first time you do it, it might be a little challenging, but once you do it once, the FAFSA form is your best friend for the next 4 years. So the purpose of this presentation tonight is finding money for college, the basics of financial aid, the CSS profile, and the FAFSA form. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to talk about federal student aid, state student aid, aid from colleges, and scholarships and other resources tonight. Next slide. We'll answer what is financial aid, who is eligible for financial aid, give you an estimate of what you can receive, how you apply, what happens after you apply, and where you can obtain more information. Next slide. Okay, so what is financial aid? Financial aid is money that helps you pay from college. It comes from free sources like grants that you don't have to pay back, scholarships, there's work study where you work to earn money, and then there's federal student loans that you do have to pay back. Biggest misconception that there is every year, families fill out the FAFSA form, they say, my child only got student loans. I thought I was getting financial aid. The federal student loans are considered financial aid. One thing to keep in mind is, and it was mentioned in the presentation, Division I, Division II athletics. If you are a student who is fortunate enough to be eligible to play Division I or Division II athletics, you could be eligible for an athletic scholarship. The big thing to keep in mind there is you want to get the scholarship offer in writing. And it should say, we're going to give Stephen a $40,000 scholarship, $10,000 a year for 4 years to play baseball. You want to make sure you get that in writing. If you don't, talk to the coach, speak to the school to make sure it is in writing. Division III schools like Ramapo, William Patterson, Montclair State have athletics. Students will get recruited to play there, but Division III athletics do not offer athletic scholarships. That would just be any academic scholarship based on grades or possibly a need-based grant. Next slide, please. Okay, who is eligible for federal student aid or to fill out a FAFSA form? So you have to be a US citizen or eligible non-citizen, meaning you have your green card. You must be a high school graduate or have a GED. You must have a valid Social Security card. Lots of times we'll see students that apply, but their Social Security card is only authorized for work. If that is the case, you might not be eligible to apply for federal financial aid. If you're a male student and 18 years or older, you must register with Selective Service. If for some reason you have a problem with registering for Selective Service, you can contact the Selective Service organization at sss.gov and obtain a status letter, meaning you have the right to object to having to fill out to register for Selective Service. And the school will get the information, we can clear things and possibly still award you federal financial aid once the federal government makes their decision on your status letter. The other key thing to keep in mind is you're receiving federal student aid, you have to maintain academic progress. So that means you have to maintain at least a 2.0 GPA. If you're offered an academic scholarship, those GPAs are usually higher, but any scholarship you're awarded will spell out you've been awarded $60,000, $15,000 a year for 4 years, and you must maintain a 3.0 GPA. And they'll outline probation, so if the GPA drops, how you can maintain your scholarship, different things that you can do. Next slide. Okay, so as was mentioned in the presentation, the FAFSA form opened up today. It's available at FAFSA.gov. Now, before you just go in and start filling out the FAFSA form, you really need to create an FSA ID and password for the student who's applying and the parent that's applying. You go to the link on the screen, FSAID.gov, and you'd create that for the student first and for the parent. Parents, if this is your second or third child in school, you already should have an FSA ID and password. You do not need to create a new one. Okay, you can use the same FSA ID and password for all of your children. Next slide. The documents you'll need to apply. Oh, forgive me. There's a typo on this. It should be the 2019 federal tax return and W-2s. So you would need that for your parents and for the students. It's easier if you have this information in front of you when you sit down at the computer to do it, because the FAFSA form will tell you what lines to pull everything from. Also, the FAFSA has changed in that it will let you link to your tax returns. So when you're on it, a screen will come up. And the key thing with doing that is, and this is why it's helpful to have your tax returns in front of you, you have to type your name and address exactly as it appears on your tax return. So for example, if everything is capitalized for your street address, make it capital. Sometimes you don't match it directly, it won't allow you to use the automation tool to upload your tax return. Your child has a driver's license, you need their driver's license. And you need to put your name on the FAFSA form as it appears on your Social Security card. Okay, so for example, if you look at the slide, my title, I use the name F. Sean O'Neill. My full name is Frederick Sean O'Neill. On my Social Security card, it's Frederick S. O'Neill. If I filled out my FAFSA form as F. Sean or Frederick Sean, it would reject because that doesn't match my Social Security card. So I'd have to fill it out as Frederick S. O'Neill. If you have a green card, there's a section that says check green card and put in your A number. That matches up, that'll let the form go through. You also need, if you own a business or investment information, and you'd need your mortgage information if you own a multifamily house, a rental property, or an investment property. How this works is the FAFSA doesn't care about your single family home, but if you own one of these other types of home, that's considered an investment, and it has to go in investment information. And if we just use round numbers, let's say you own a 2-family home and it's currently worth $400,000. You have a mortgage on it for 200, subtract the 200 from the 400, that leaves an investment value of 200,000. If you're living in the home, you divide the investment value by 50%, so you're only going to put $100,000 in the investment value because you're living in the home. And that would be the investment portion of your 2-family home. But a regular home, single family, you don't have to put anything on about your mortgage information on the FAFSA form. Next slide. So again, to fill out the FAFSA form, you go to FAFSA.gov. It's open as of October 1st. We advise waiting a couple days because sometimes there's glitches in the system. If you're a new student, to receive state aid from the state of New Jersey, you have to complete the FAFSA form no later than April 1st. But with the deadlines for the colleges that you're applying to, most people will need to complete their FAFSA form by December 15th. So you adhere with all college deadlines that you're applying to. The federal government has great help tools, so you can call the 1-800 line to chat and ask questions. The other key thing to keep in mind when you're filling out the FAFSA form, you know you're done after you've signed as a student, the parent has signed, and you get the confirmation number, okay? If you do not receive the confirmation number, then you have not completed the FAFSA form. We get probably about 10 to 20 students a year who stop the application before they actually submit it. The other thing is, if you can, use the data retrieval tool. It brings over your adjusted gross income and your tax information, but you would still need your W-2s to go in and individually list what each parent made. Okay, that's the one thing that the FAFSA and the retrieval tool does not do. It does not break out your income. It just brings over your overall adjusted gross income. So you would still need to use your W-2s to break out the individual income for mom or dad. Next slide. Okay, so how do I apply for federal student aid? Double check that your info is correct by logging in on your FAFSA form, reviewing your data, correct any mistakes and submit corrected information, and allow 5 to 7 days for the FAFSA form to be processed and sent to your school. You will get a separate email that says your FAFSA has been processed. And once it's processed, each school is going to have a different process as to how they send you the information. So as was mentioned earlier, if you're an early decision student, your FAFSA will be processed first. If you're an early action student, then we start sending those FAFSA and award packages out. And then everyone who's just a regular admittance student, those packages go out later. So it all depends on how you apply as to when the school is going to send you out the information. But the college that you're applying to will be able to give you an idea and dates for when they'll be sending out your financial aid package. Typically, with the way things have changed and the FAFSA form being offered so early, most financial aid award packages are sent out between middle of February to mid-April. Next slide. Okay. Now, there can be some special conditions when completing the FAFSA form. If you're divorced, you're only including your current household, okay? If you receive any child support, you'd put the child support. If you're separated, the parent that the child is living with should fill out the FAFSA form. You would put your information and separate the income out based on what you, the parent that the child is living with, is earning for the 2019 year. If you've gotten remarried, okay, your new household is the information that you put on the FAFSA form. So you would need mom, stepdad, stepmom, their current income and information to put on the FAFSA form. If you have questions, I'm doing the presentation tonight. You can always reach out to me. My contact information's going to be on the last slide, but you can contact the financial aid office at whatever school you're applying to. We're here to help. In the world of financial aid, there's something called a special circumstance request. And in the current world that we're living in COVID-19, a lot of people have lost jobs, things have changed. So what you would do is you'd fill out the FAFSA form, your 2019 income information, submit it, let the college create a financial aid award or package for you. Then you'd reach out to them and say, we have a change. Our income has changed drastically due to COVID-19 and in the year 2020. They will give you the forms that you need, and you could send in the information to request it. And what this means is we'll reevaluate it based on the lesser income. And lots of times this can mean if you weren't getting a federal or state grant, now you're eligible for one. Maybe you'd be eligible for more money from the college. So there's a lot of different things that we can look at, but we're here to help you and work with you through this process. Next slide. This is another great tool, 7 tips to complete the FAFSA form. It's a great little website to go check out. It helps answer some questions, give you some examples. We have families that use that. So that's another good tool. Next slide. Okay, so other types of financial aid available. If you live in the state of New Jersey and you're a New Jersey resident, you must be enrolled at a 4-year school full-time, which is 12 credits or more, to be eligible for an NJ TAG grant. This grant covers tuition only, okay? If you go to a community college, you could be eligible for a part-time TAG grant. The application is there at njfams.hesa.org, but the great thing is when you complete the FAFSA form and you get your confirmation page, there's a link that pops up that says, do you want to complete your state application? So you can click on that and complete the NJ TAG application, and it only counts toward New Jersey schools. Now, the thing with the TAG grant, it can be $0 to a maximum of $12,000 a year, depending upon the school you're attending. So if you're attending community college, it's a much smaller grant. If you're attending a private school like Fairleigh, Caldwell, Stevens, it's a much higher TAG grant. And then state schools are in the middle. You know, maximum is between like $6,000 to $9,000 a year. If you qualify, you could also be eligible for an EOF grant from the state. And again, the amount of the EOF grant varies depending on whether you're at community college, state college, or a private school. Okay. Any private scholarships you have to apply for on your own. Those are sites like CapEx, studentscholar.org, FastWeb. Each college that you go to should have its own scholarships. Foundation or endowed scholarships is what they're called. So you can check that school's website when you get accepted. Some will have scholarships for incoming freshmen. Like, for example, Fairleigh Dickinson. I'm an alumni. I'll get emails from people that use me as a recommendation, say, would you recommend this student for an alumni scholarship? There's certain scholarships that are available for incoming freshmen. Lots of times you have to be at the school for a semester, earn your GPA, and then they have the different scholarships that you can apply for. The point is just be sure to explore all your options. If you have questions, contact the Office of Financial Aid. They can point you in the direction of scholarships, tell you where to look and where to search. And the best resource is your high school guidance office, because they have access to a lot of scholarships for high school seniors coming out and the best places for you to go and search right now. Next slide. Okay, so how much financial aid can I receive? And in general, it just basically depends on something called your financial need. And this is a formula that's used by every college. So financial need is determined by your estimated family contribution, or EFC, and the cost of attendance. That's the cost to attend whatever college you're going to. So this is why the FAFSA form is so important. The FAFSA form is where we get your EFC, your estimated family contribution towards school. The cost of attendance is set up by the college. So the formula is cost of attendance minus your EFC equals need. And that determines your eligibility for federal grants, subsidized loan, federal work study, and possibly need-based grants from the college you're attending. Next slide. Okay, so how much federal student aid is out there? So maximum amount based on 1920, the federal Pell Grant, $6,195. If you qualify for a federal Pell Grant, you could get an SEOG grant for a maximum of up to $4,000. If you're a TAG eligible student, again, that could be up to a maximum of $12,000, depending upon the school. You could also be available for federal work study. Federal work study, you have to work. You get paid every 2 weeks, just like a regular job, but it comes from a grant from the federal government. And depending upon the size of the school you're at, you could maybe get a maximum award of $1,000 to sometimes up to $5,000 a year. It all depends on the funding level the particular school you're attending to was given. The other part of the FAFSA form is the federal student loans. This is considered self-help aid because you have to pay back the loans. So there's a standard freshman amount, which is $5,500. So regardless of who you are, if you fill out a FAFSA form, your child is going to be awarded $5,500 in federal student loans. You don't have to take them, but it will be offered to you. Currently, the federal loans are offered at 4.53%. That's the interest rate, and they have a 1% origination fee. What does that mean? It means that you're going to pay back on the $5,500, but the school gets the loan minus the 1% origination fee. So that means $5,450 gets applied towards your bill. Okay. The other type of loan that you have to complete the FAFSA form is something called a Direct Parent Plus loan. Now, every college is different. Some colleges like Ramapo, we do not package you with a Parent Plus loan or an alternative loan. We want you to see what your balance is going to be and give you the options. Some schools will put on your financial aid award a Parent Plus loan or an alternative student loan. Just because it's on your financial aid award does not mean you're already approved or certified for these loans, okay? The Parent Plus loan and the alternative student loans have to be applied for separately. The big difference is the Parent Plus loan is applied for in the parent's name. It's based on credit history. It currently has a 7.08% interest rate, but the big difference is they charge a 4% origination fee. So best example, if you're borrowing $10,000, after the fee, the school's only going to get about $9,540. So you either have to be prepared to pay a small balance each semester or apply for a little bit more money to cover that fee. Private/alternative loan. That's a loan in the student's name based on credit history. Because the children are 18, or students, I should say, they're going to need a cosigner. Cosigner can be anybody, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandparent, whoever's willing to cosign. The good thing with the alternative loans is they're at a lower interest rate of 4.95% to start, but they go up to a maximum of 14% depending on your credit history, debt to income ratio. The question I always get is, can you recommend a loan? Legally, we're not allowed to recommend one loan or another. What loan is better? And all I can say is the big difference is the Parent Plus loan is a little easier to get. That's why they charge the higher origination fee of 4%. But if you have excellent credit, the alternative loans have a lower interest rate and they do not charge an origination fee. But any college you apply to should give you the option of both if you need it to help pay for school. And really where the loans come in is it's gap funding, because you don't start paying the loans back until 6 months after the child graduates. With the Parent Plus loan and alternative loan, the interest is going to be accruing while your child is in school. But instead of you making monthly payments now or paying it out of your pocket, you're deferring it till later. Next slide. Okay. If you're applying to certain private schools require something called the CSS profile through the College Board. I like to refer to the CSS profile as the FAFSA form on steroids because it goes into more detailed information about your family's finances, things like that. So it's available now. Most schools have a deadline between November 15th and December 15th for early decision or early action. It's used to determine your eligibility for merit-based scholarships and specific institutional scholarships or grants. There's 3 easy steps to complete the form: register, complete the application, submit the application. The cost is $25 for the first college and then $16 for each additional college. Now, there are waivers available based on income level, household size, and you can request those through the College Board, and they'll let you know if you're eligible for it. One key difference is if you're divorced or separated, they're going to ask information about the person you're divorced or separated from. So that's something to keep in mind. If you do not have contact with that person, you cannot get the information. There is a special circumstance section in the CSS profile that you can check and write the explanation. Have no contact with this person for the last 5 years, don't know their whereabouts, and submit it that way so you don't have to complete that section. Next slide. Okay, so here's the link for applying for the CSS profile. Before starting the profile, here's a good little tool to go through, gives you helpful hints. There's also an interactive presentation for the CSS profile that is good to look at before you start it. And then they also have a helpline and an email line that you can get information from if you run into questions or problems when you're completing the CSS profile. Next slide. And as I mentioned earlier, again, if a special circumstance situation exists, use the comment section /special circumstance. If you're divorced and asked to supply your ex's information, there's no contact, you can put that, you can request a waiver. The waiver may need to be approved by the school you're applying to. So in that case, you would just reach out to the financial aid office or the admissions office in that school and say, is it possible to get a fee waiver or an information waiver for the CSS profile? And the other key point, if you're remarried, you must enter your new household size income information for both parents. You know, a lot of people say, but it's my responsibility, or it's their child, it's their responsibility. Unfortunately, it's looked at if you're living in the same house and you're remarried, it's all your income combined that creates your information. Next slide. So here's a sample financial aid award chart. So community colleges are the least expensive. State colleges are a little more, and private colleges are a lot more expensive. But if we take the same family with an EFC of $3,000, take the cost of attendance at the community college minus the $3,000 EFC needs $9,000 in need. You'd be eligible for an estimated grant amount of $6,880. That leaves a difference that you could take out in loans of $5,120. Now we go to the state college. A little more expensive, $18,000 a year. Same EFC leaves a need of $15,000. You get the same amount in grant money of $6,880, but the state college gave you a scholarship of $5,000, and now you take loans for $5,500, and you're left with a small balance due for the year of $620. Now we jump to the private college, which costs about $50,000 a year. Same EFC of $3,000, gives you a need of $47,000. Now you get grants of $16,880. Same student loans of $5,500, but because the private college costs so more, they give you scholarships of $21,000, leaving a balance for the year of $6,620. So this is just a true life, rough example of what happens at every school, and it's based on each family individually. And when you complete the FAFSA form, it's looking at your household size, your adjusted gross income, number of people in college. So you could be a family that makes $50,000 a year, but it might be just a single mom and one child, compared to if you're a family of 4 with 1 child or 2 children in school, you could qualify for more in the way of grants from the state, the federal government, and possibly the school you're going to. So that's how this process is very individualized, and that's why we encourage everybody to complete the FAFSA form, the CSS profile, because basically you have nothing to lose. School will create your award, we'll put it together, and then if you have changes, at least we have a baseline that we could look at and change off of and work with you with. Next slide, please. How can I apply for private scholarships? So it depends on the program. Do your research, ask your college financial aid, admissions office about additional scholarships or grants available at each college. Apply for all scholarships through your high school and your guidance office. Studentaid.gov, FastWeb, CapEx are all organizations that we get sent scholarships from for incoming students and even current students. So those are some sources, some resources to look at. Next slide. Some other places out there to check. Coca-Cola has a scholarship, Tylenol, Hershey's, Johnson & Johnson's, the Teamsters, Knights of Columbus, Elks, Unico, your local church or Chamber of Commerce. You can search by origin. There's a Polish Slavic scholarship. There's an Irish American scholarship. There's Unico for Italian Americans. There's the National Hispanic Society. McDonald's, Kmart, Walmart, they offer scholarships. Key thing to keep in mind is most scholarship applications should be free. If they ask you to pay, I'd be leery about it. If they ask you to send in your driver's license, social security, I would not apply for it. And the other thing to keep in mind, if the offer seems too good to be true, it probably is. So if you're doing a search and all of a sudden you get an email that says, oh, congratulations, you've won this scholarship, or, you know, send us your driver's license and click here to apply for a $50,000 scholarship, do not click on it, because that's just phishing. That's not something you applied for. What we listed here are all sites that in my 22 years, students continue to get scholarships from, and companies that students can still work with. Next slide. So what happens next? Once you fill out the FAFSA form and the CSS profile and you're accepted by that school, they will create a financial aid, and it's called a number of different things, and they all mean the same thing. Could be called your financial aid award, your financial aid package, your college financing plan, but it's all the same thing. It means that they're going to award you the grants, scholarships, loans that you're entitled to, break down your cost, and say, this is what we're covering, this is what you have left to pay, and these are the additional resources that you can use to try and help pay for those costs. Okay. Once you decide which school to attend, keep in touch with the financial aid office. If they send a request for additional information, please send that information back as soon as possible. There's something in the financial aid world called verification. New Jersey's a 30% state, meaning 3 out of every 10 students will get selected for a process called verification. And that means we just need to see your tax returns and W-2s, but each school will send you out the information that they need. You need to get that back to us as soon as possible, because that's when we're going to finalize your award to verify the grants and everything that you're eligible for. Keep in mind, most schools will start sending out award notifications sometime in February. Some schools may do it sooner if you are an early decision student. Next slide. Where can I find more information? Studentaid.gov is a great site to give you information about the aid programs and scholarship searches, the loans. You can call 1-800-4-FED-AID for information about the aid programs and help with the FAFSA form. Next slide. And that's it for me, folks. So if you have any questions, I'll stay on the line for questions and answers. If you can go to the next slide, there's my contact information, but I'm sure the school will put the slide up. So again, I offer it because I'm doing this for you. If you need help or assistance, please feel free to reach out to me or email me, and I'd be glad to provide additional information.
Guys, thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Thank you so much for sharing all that information. Counselors, if we can come back on, I want to filter through some questions. There were a lot of questions in that chat box. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to type it into the Q&A box now, and you know, we'll get to it. Okay, so just give us about another 15 or 20 minutes for us to be able to filter through the questions and provide a little bit more information. And then again, this webinar or session will be it's recorded and it'll be posted tomorrow on our THS Counselors YouTube channel, as well as it'll be posted in the class of 2021, our seniors, Google Classroom. So a couple of questions that we'll go through. Where's everybody? They're probably trying to figure out how to get their cameras back on. So where are the forms? So great question. In terms of the transcript request form and the parent consent form, as we were going, as Mr. O'Neill was presenting, I actually dropped them into the Google Classroom for the class of 2021. Again, the parent consent form must be completed first before your school counselor can send out any of your transcript or supporting documents to any scholarship or college information. The forms will also be available on the school counseling website that can be found through the district website. Some other questions. Again, the parent brag sheet and the student brag sheet. So Mr. Reese, thanks for hopping on and jumping in with this question. If you just want to elaborate a little bit more where the student can find the parent brag sheet as well as the student brag sheet.
Yeah, no problem. Keisha, real quick, I think you have to unblock some of the staff. That's why they can't get on. The brag sheets in Naviance, if you log into Naviance as a parent, and if you don't have, you can email your school counselor to get your login. You go to the About Me tab. It's going to be a student brag sheet as well as a parent brag sheet. You can fill out the parent brag sheet. As much information as you can, because these brag sheets really help us write their recommendations. It helps us a tremendous amount. So embellish, go as much as you can, answer the question as detailed as possible, and we'll do our best to try to put some of that stuff in our own writing into the recommendation. So Naviance, the About Me tab, then you'll see parent brag sheet to the left, I believe.
Awesome. Thanks, Mr. Reese. I see Mr. Book is on as well. Mr. Book, what's your thought on an email address? What email should a student use when applying the school's email address or their personal email address?
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. I would lean towards using the school address for two reasons. One, it's professional and it makes it easier for us to match Common App and Naviance. So that is my recommendation. I will say this, if you have put a regular personal email into your Common App, if you go right in the top right-hand corner of the Common App, you'll see like one of those gear wheels, and you'd be able to edit the email if you need to.
Awesome. And while you're on that topic, Mr. Book, can you talk a little bit about FERPA, the FERPA waiver in Common App? And yeah.
Absolutely, and thanks again, Ms. Cooper, because I forgot to mention that in my slides. So this is so vital, guys. You have to, so in the My College section of the Common App, you'll see something called Recommenders and FERPA. Click on that and make sure to waive the FERPA. You're gonna click on the first and third circle on the Common App. So this way, you don't get to view your teacher letters or recommendations. It just makes the process easier.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Book. Another question here, I'm going to throw this to Ms. Taylor, one of our former English teachers and also a THS alum. We have 3 out of our 6 counselors that are THS alums. So we have Mr. Reese, Ms. Mitchell, and Ms. Taylor. So for your question, Ms. Taylor, is there a specific class a senior can take to help with their essay?
So I actually just jumped on there and wrote in the chat. Usually the junior and senior English teachers will do a college essay writing exercise, mostly in the senior English classes. I know they all have done it, but there is not a specific class to do the essay writing.
Okay, thank you. A couple of financial aid questions for you, Mr. O'Neill. If a student gets their license after the FAFSA is filled, what do they do?
They could go in and update it. It's not required if at the time, the FAFSA is a snapshot in time. So when you're filling it out right now, if you don't have your license, that's fine. Just answer no to the question and submit it.
Awesome. And I'm going to throw another one to you, Mr. O'Neill. Do parents and students need individual SAID or one for all?
No, they need individual. Students need to have their own, and parents need to have their own. The good thing with the parent one, it can be used for all students. So if they have other students coming up, it's going to stick with them. Mine stuck with me for 22 years. Well, more than that, from being a student to going into being an FA director. So.
Awesome. Here's another one for you. Is there an advantage in terms of financial aid to applying early action?
That's the biggest, I want to say it's the biggest myth. It affects more of the private schools. A lot of private schools have limit on their funds. So for those schools, they have certain deadlines. And if you don't meet the deadlines, sometimes all the scholarship and institutional funds could be used up. In general, schools try to balance, because we all have a class goal to meet, to spread the wealth around. So it would be some of your more particular private schools that it might be better to apply for early action as opposed to early decision, so you're not bound, but you still take advantage of as much aid as you can possibly get.
Okay. So we're going to keep rolling with the financial aid questions. Everyone's thinking, show me the money. Does financial need affect how much a school will give to a merit scholarship recipient, or is it based solely on grades and extracurricular activities?
For all public schools, it's based on grades and extracurricular activities. Private schools that are giving out some of the bigger scholarships will take need into account. So again, each school might have will have a separate budget for need-based grants, and will have a separate base for scholarships. So they might look at a student and say, oh, you qualify for a provost scholarship of $15,000 a year, and we're going to tack on a need-based grant of 10 to give that student 25, because they might just miss the criteria of a larger scholarship, so that they could save that money for the more academically qualified student who doesn't have the need. So again, they're spreading their money around as much as they can.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Ms. Fleischer, I'm going to throw this one your way. In terms of using email addresses, someone's asking, won't we need to continue using our accounts after we graduate? Would our school email still work with the accounts? I'm assuming they're asking about their college accounts, or the email that they would utilize for college application.
I do not, but I believe that the TNEC email actually does expire when they graduate. So my recommendation is that they use the TNEC email address during the application process, but what school that you're going to, you should move it to your personal email address. Because yes, you're right. You're going to get correspondences from the college that you're not going to be able to receive anymore. So if by the time you graduate, you haven't decided which school you want to go to, then definitely make sure you go in and change those email addresses to your personal one.
Thanks for that. And just to add on, it expires in about 30 days. Mr. Saleh, the technology coordinator, and I were talking about that over the summer. I'm going to ask him to extend it a little bit longer, but by the middle to the end of July, the TNEC school addresses are no longer active. So you also want to think in terms of where you're housing your essays and other institutions. So it's great to utilize. Team will tell you, I love G Suite, I love Google Forms, the Drive, the Docs, all that other good stuff. But as you're winding down your senior year, you also want to share those forms and documents that you may be saving on your TNEC school's email address to a personal email address. And also that personal email address should be, I think somebody mentioned appropriate. So just be mindful of that, because that becomes your signature, so to speak. So whatever you choose for your personal email address, kind of keep it general. Or also consider maybe having a family email address so your parents can kind of keep up with some of the scholarship application deadlines and things of that nature.
And Ms. Golden Cooper, one point to piggyback off of that, if I may, when students fill out the FAFSA form, they should use something other than their high school email address. So you should have your own email address, Yahoo, Google, because your parents are going to have to use their own. So you can't have a family email address for both the student and the parent on either the FAFSA or CSS profile. It will reject. And what we find is a lot of students will use their high school email address. Then sophomore year, they go to reapply for the FAFSA form. They can't get back into that email address. They can't sign. It gets rejected. We have to help them create a new update their FSA ID and password. So if you could do it now, it just saves yourself some trouble later.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. So you have your Teaneck Schools email address. Maybe start if you don't have a basic personal email address to utilize for the FAFSA. Thank you for that. I think that answers, I'm looking through, we talked about Naviance, where to go on to complete it. Ms. Mitchell did mention that their parents, you do have access to Naviance as well. We were actually going into it on that end. Ms. Mitchell, if you want to talk a little bit more about what parents can see in their view of Naviance when they log in.
Yeah, sure. So just as far as Naviance, everything that your students are able to see, you are able to see on your end. So being able to just go in and check in on the colleges that they are applying to, you can see that. Check in on the maybe assessments. You may have a child that's not quite sure yet of what they want to do. So you may be able to check out their assessments that they've done and have some conversation with them about a certain direction they may be interested or wanting to go in. We've mentioned the parent brag sheet, so you can definitely do that. There are colleges just doing a college search. So there's different tools that you can get in on your own or sit down with your child and actually do some college searching together. So there's also a tool, Road Trip Nation, that's pretty helpful and useful to explore and also explore with your child. And that is helpful for a student that may not be completely sure on the fence exactly what direction they may want to go in a career field or a major. It just gives it some interviews from live people in specific fields and areas. So there's lots of opportunities to check out. And the college visits, that's right on the home page. So again, that's something really key and important to just check out on a regular basis to see what schools are coming up. And if you know your child is interested in the school, you check it out and let them know if they're not quite sure that it's coming up.
Awesome, thank you. Question, do the Teaneck student email accounts accept emails outside of the Teaneck Schools domain? Yes, but there is a bit more of a filter. So it depends what's coming in. So I hope that answers the question. But yes, they do accept. It just depends because of the filter. How many college visits can a student get? Ms. Garcia, do you want to answer that one? How many college visits can a student get? I'm thinking maybe if they are able to attend an actual college visit on the campus, not necessarily virtual.
Okay, thank you. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's how many colleges can student visit? I believe there's no limit. So if you're visiting during your spring break, your winter break, you're not missing school, as many as you can afford in terms of time, expenses, because they, if they're not really close, sometimes it gets expensive. If you're visiting during school days, your school days are excused, but of course, being present in school is important too. So we wouldn't want to see you out every other day, for the whole school year doing college visits. So in that sense, there is a limit, but nobody's going to do that. So as many as you can squeeze in, depending on your schedule and your finances. But a lot right now is virtual. So even though would love for you to go physically and get to the campuses, because that's when you get a real sense, a lot of campuses are still not accepting visitors yet. So you can do some virtual tours, and those, because you're not actually traveling, they don't take that much time. So you can do some, one every evening if you want to do that many, or one every weekend. So sometimes the fact that we're in a virtual climate has some silver linings. You can save time, you can save money by doing the virtuals for now. But if you do have an opportunity to visit in person, we definitely encourage you to do that, because that's when you're going to get that real sense of what it's like to be there.
Thank you for that. And just a follow-up clarification, they were saying no during school. So there is an attendance policy about how many days you can miss. I don't remember off the top of my head of how many college visits are waived, but if you reach out to your counselor, we can look it up and just make sure we have the exact number of days. Okay, so I think that pretty much rounds out our entire presentation. A couple quick points again. The transcript request information, it has been posted in the 2021 Google Classroom, both for the the parent consent one is there. So you have to send it to your parent because it needs to be submitted from their email address as listed in Skyward. That's just a way for us to verify that your parent or guardian is actually consenting, as well as the student transcript request. Both those documents, or excuse me, Google Forms, are located in the classroom. Especially the parent consent one, where we'll send it out via Naviance. So hopefully your email address has been in Naviance. We'll put it on our school counseling website, try to find other means to kind of push that out. Another way to get information, if you have not downloaded the THS app, we have our own app, and a lot of the information I push out there as well, in terms of forms and what's coming up and what's happening. That's there as well. The both PowerPoints will be available via PDF, and all those areas that I mentioned, the Google Classroom, it'll be on the website. So we're putting the information out there. Another thing, just so parents and students, if you're still logged in, so you're aware, the counselors have started their senior meetings. So if you have not had a chance to book your senior meetings with your counselors, go on to to Google Classroom. That's where you will get information, posting scholarship information, just other loads of information is there. The links to all the counselors' appointment calendar is under the materials, so the information is there. Just please encourage your child to access that Google Classroom, and look at information. If they have any other questions, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to reach out to the school counselors. They're here to help. We are here to help. So I think that is it. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening and hanging in with us. A lot of great information. Excuse me, I want to give a huge shout out to the 6 most fabulous school counselors that I have come across. They are a rock star team, loaded with information, and definitely here to help and assist. So I guess my time's up. That was a stop talking, Cooper, because they all know I can talk. If there are no questions, thank you so much. Be well, be safe. We truly do miss you guys, and but we're here. All right, guys, take care.
Thank you. Good
Thank you, everyone.
night.
Take care. Good